Thomas Eclore was a man who had everything: wealth, power, and prestige. As the only son of Chief Eclore, one of Nigeria's wealthiest businessmen, his life was adorned with luxury. Rolex watches graced his wrist, custom-made Tom Ford suits hugged his broad shoulders, and his fleet of cars included the latest Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, and a Lamborghini Urus. He had just returned from Yale University with an MBA, ready to take over his father's billion-dollar empire. Yet fate had other plans. One fateful afternoon, Thomas was driving his sleek black Maybach down an unfamiliar village road, the hum of the engine breaking the silence of the rural landscape. He had taken a wrong turn and was now completely lost. His phone had no signal, and frustration gnawed at him. Then he saw her. Amadia was walking along the roadside, a basket of oranges balanced on her head. Her dark skin glowed under the sun, and her eyes, deep and enchanting, held a quiet strength. Her simple village attire did nothing to hide her beauty. He pulled over, lowered his tinted window, and called out, "Excuse me, can you help me find my way back to the city?" Amadia studied him curiously. She rarely saw men like him in her village. His aura exuded power. "You're far from the city, sir. You need to turn back and take the road by the old baobab tree." Her voice was soft yet confident. Thomas found himself captivated. He watched as she adjusted her basket and prepared to leave, but he couldn't just drive away. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Amadia." That was how it began, the love story that would shake the foundations of one of the wealthiest families in Nigeria. Thomas couldn't get Amadia out of his mind. After that first encounter, he found himself making excuses to return to the village under the pretense of charity work. His father, Chief Eclore, often funded community projects, and Thomas used this as an opportunity to visit Amadia's village. Every time he saw her, his admiration grew. She was kind, intelligent in her own way, and hardworking. Unlike the women in his social circle who flaunted designer bags and expensive vacations, Amadia was humble and content with the little she had. One evening, Thomas arrived at the marketplace where Amadia and her parents sold oranges. He stepped out of his car, dressed in a crisp white Dolce & Gabbana shirt, black tailor trousers, and Gucci loafers. A diamond-studded Rolex shimmered on his wrist, catching the eyes of curious villagers. Amadia gasped when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, worried about the stares they were attracting. "I came to see you," Thomas said, his voice filled with warmth. "I want to know you more." Her parents, bewildered by the attention, watched as their daughter spoke to the rich young man. Amadia's mother nudged her father. "Do you know who he is?" "He's the chief's son." "Go inside," her father urged. "This can only bring trouble." But it was too late. The rumors had begun to spread like wildfire. Thomas Eclore, the billionaire's son, was interested in a poor village girl. When word reached Chief Eclore, he was furious. Seated in his grand living room, adorned with Versace furniture and golden chandeliers, he clenched his jaw as his wife, Lady Ebel, paced the room. "This is disgraceful," she fumed. "Thomas is the heir to an empire. How can he stoop so low to associate with a girl who sells oranges in the market?" Chief Eclore's voice was cold. "He will stop this nonsense immediately." That night, Thomas returned home to face his father's wrath. "You are a disgrace," Chief Eclore bellowed. "Do you think I built this empire for you to throw it away on a poor, uneducated girl?" Thomas remained calm. "Father, Amadia is not just some girl. She is kind, hardworking, and has a heart purer than anyone I have met." "You will marry Yendi," his father commanded. "She is wealthy, educated, and worthy of being your wife. She will take over her father's company and merge it with ours. That is the kind of woman you need." Thomas clenched his fists. "I will not marry Yendi. I love Amadia." Lady Ebel gasped. "You don't know what love is, Thomas. This girl is beneath you. She will never fit into our world." "I don't care about status or wealth," Thomas said firmly. "I will marry Amadia." Chief Eclore's face darkened. "If you do, I will disown you." Meanwhile, Yendi had just arrived from the United States. She stepped off her private jet, dressed in a form-fitting balmain dress, Hermes Birkin bag hanging from her arm. Her return to Nigeria was much anticipated. She was set to take over her father's company and was expected to marry Thomas, forming a power couple that would dominate the business world. She was used to getting what she wanted, and she wanted Thomas. When she heard about Amadia, her blood boiled. A village girl, she scoffed. Does she think she can take what belongs to me? With a smirk, she picked up her phone and made a call. Find out everything about that girl. Where she lives, her weaknesses. I want to make her disappear. Back in the village, Amadia had no idea of the storm that was about to hit her. The morning sun bathed Amadia's small hut in golden light as she prepared for the market. She had no idea that danger lurked in the shadows. Yendi's men had arrived in the village. They watched Amadia's every move, gathering information. Within a day, they learned everything. Her parents struggled to make ends meet, the small hut she lived in, the way Thomas visited the village just to see her. Yendi sat in her luxurious penthouse, a glass of champagne in her hand, scrolling through pictures of Amadia on her phone. A cruel smile curled on her lips. She's pretty, I'll give her that, she murmured. But she doesn't belong in our world. She dialed another number. It's time to make her suffer. The next day, Amadia was in the market, arranging her oranges when a convoy of black SUVs pulled up. The villagers gasped as the doors opened, and Yendi stepped out, flanked by bodyguards. Dressed in a red Valentino dress and Louboutin heels, she looked like royalty. The market women whispered amongst themselves. Who is this woman and why was she here? Yendi sauntered over to Amadia's stall, her eyes cold and calculating. She picked up an orange, turning it in her perfectly manicured fingers before dropping it back into the basket with disgust. So, you're the little village girl trying to steal my man, Yendi said, her voice dripping with venom. Amadia stiffened. I'm not stealing anyone, she said calmly. Yendi laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. Oh, you're adorable. Do you really think Thomas will marry you? A girl who sells oranges. She looked around, then raised her voice. Listen, everyone. This girl thinks she is worthy of marrying Thomas Eclore, the heir to a billion-dollar empire. The villagers gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others looked at Amadia with pity. Let me tell you how this will end, Yendi continued. He will come to his senses, leave you behind, and marry a woman of his class. And you'll still be here, selling oranges, just like your parents. Tears stung Amadia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Love isn't about class or money, she said quietly. Yendi smirked. Keep telling yourself that, darling. She turned to her bodyguard. Pay for all the oranges. Let's see if money can buy her silence. One of her guards threw a wad of cash onto the stall. Amadia stared at it, then, with steady hands, picked up the money and threw it back at Yendi's feet. I'm not for sale, she said, her voice steady. Yendi's smile faded. You'll regret this. With that, she turned and walked back to her car, leaving behind a silent, shaken crowd. When Thomas heard about what happened at the market, rage filled his veins. Without hesitation, he stormed into his father's mansion, where Yendi was sipping tea with Lady Ebel. What the hell did you do to Amadia? Thomas demanded. Yendi gave him an innocent smile. I only told her the truth. A girl like her has no place by your side. Thomas clenched his fists. You have no right to bully her. Yendi stood, crossing her arms. I have every right. I am the woman you're supposed to marry. Your father has already given his blessing. Chief Eclore entered the room, his expression firm. Thomas, enough. Yendi is your future. That village girl is nothing. Thomas turned to his father, his voice filled with defiance. Then I will walk away from this family, from this wealth. I will build my own empire, without your help. The room fell silent. Lady Ebel gasped. Chief Eclore's eyes darkened. If you leave, you will no longer be my son. Thomas didn't flinch. Then so be it. With that, he turned and walked out, determined to fight for the woman he loved. Thomas drove to the village, his Lamborghini Urus kicking up dust as it sped through the dirt road. The moment he arrived at Amadia's small hut, she ran to him, her eyes filled with worry. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "You shouldn't have fought with your family because of me." Thomas took her hands in his. "I won't let them dictate my life, Amadia. You are my choice." Tears welled in her eyes. "But what if they take everything from you?" Thomas smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then I will build my own empire. I have my education, my skills, and I'm not afraid to start over." Amadia admired his courage, but deep inside, she feared for him. She knew his father wouldn't give up so easily. Meanwhile, back at the Eclore mansion, Chief Eclore sat in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Yendi paced in front of him, fuming. "We cannot let Thomas throw his future away," she snapped. Chief Eclore took a slow sip of his drink. "If he wants to defy me, then I'll show him what happens to men who challenge my authority." The next morning, Thomas woke up to a harsh reality. His bank accounts were frozen, his access to the family's business was revoked, and his luxury penthouse was no longer his. Chief Eclore had cut him off completely. Thomas stood in his now empty apartment, the once glamorous space stripped of all its luxury. His father had made sure he had nothing left. Most of his so-called friends abandoned him the moment they realized he was no longer wealthy. The world he once ruled had turned its back on him. But he wasn't broken. Determined to rebuild, Thomas reached out to old business connections and started working on a startup of his own. He poured every skill he had learned at Yale into it, spending sleepless nights drafting business plans and networking with investors. Amadia was by his side through it all, bringing him home-cooked meals, offering words of encouragement, and reminding him that true wealth wasn't just about money. It was about resilience. Meanwhile, Yendi watched from the sidelines, expecting Thomas to come crawling back. But instead, he was rising, and that infuriated her. "I need to end this once and for all," she muttered. Yendi's plan was cruel but effective. One evening, Amadia received a letter, supposedly from Thomas, asking her to meet him at a luxury hotel in the city. Excited, she borrowed a simple but elegant dress and took a taxi to the hotel. But when she arrived, it wasn't Thomas who was waiting for her. It was Yendi. Amadia froze as she saw the smirk on Yendi's face. "Welcome to my world," Yendi said, sipping her wine. "What is this?" Amadia asked, her heart pounding. Yendi leaned forward. "This is a warning. Leave Thomas, or I will destroy everything you love. Your parents? I can make sure they never sell another orange again. You? I can make sure no one in this city respects you." Amadia's eyes filled with tears, but she lifted her chin. "You can threaten me all you want. I'm not afraid of you." Yendi smirked. "Oh, sweetheart, I don't make threats. I make promises." That night, Amadia left the hotel, shaken but determined. She would not let Yendi win. Meanwhile, Thomas was closer than ever to a breakthrough. Investors were showing interest in his business, and for the first time since losing his fortune, he felt hope. But he had no idea that Amadia was now in danger. Amadia returned to the village, her heart pounding. Yendi's threats haunted her, but she refused to be intimidated. She knew Thomas was working hard to rebuild his life, and she would not be the reason he failed. But Yendi was far from done. A few days later, Amadia's parents woke up to chaos. Their small stall at the market had been vandalized, oranges scattered across the ground, wooden crates smashed to pieces. A note was left behind. "This is just the beginning. Walk away from Thomas, or you'll lose everything." Tears streamed down Amadia's mother's face as she fell to her knees. Her father clenched his fists in frustration. They had worked so hard to survive, and now it was all being taken away. Amadia knew exactly who was behind it. She stormed into the city, heading straight for Yendi's office. Yendi was seated in a lavish leather chair, wearing a custom Chanel suit, a diamond Rolex on her wrist. She barely looked up when Amadia barged in. "You went too far," Amadia shouted, slamming her hands on the desk. Yendi smirked, swirling a glass of expensive wine. "Did I? I warned you. You destroyed my family's business. Yendi sighed, pretending to be bored. And I'll destroy much more if you don't listen. She leaned forward, her voice turning icy. You think Thomas can protect you? He can't even protect himself. Right now, he's nothing but a man with dreams and no power. Amadia's hands trembled with rage. You'll never have his heart. Yendi chuckled. Maybe not. But I don't need his heart, darling. I need his name, his status, his father's empire. Love is irrelevant. Amadia took a shaky breath. She was up against a woman with endless wealth and a heart made of stone. But she refused to back down. If you come for my family again, I will fight back, Amadia warned. Yendi laughed. Oh, sweetheart, I want you to fight back. It will be entertaining. As Thomas worked day and night on his startup, he received an unexpected call from a former business associate. Thomas, you need to check the news. Confused, Thomas grabbed his phone and opened a major business website. His blood ran cold. Thomas McClure's girlfriend, gold digger or opportunist? The article was filled with lies, claiming that Amadia had seduced Thomas for his money, that she was plotting to trap him into marriage so she could inherit his wealth. There were even fabricated quotes from anonymous sources saying she was using him. Thomas clenched his jaw. He knew exactly who was behind this. Yendi. Furious, he drove to her office, barging in without knocking. Yendi looked up from her desk, smiling. Thomas. What a surprise. He slammed his phone onto the desk. Take it down. Yendi leaned back, examining her nails. Why? The truth hurts. You know this is all lies. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Maybe. But the world believes what I tell them to believe. You should be grateful I made her famous. Thomas clenched his fists. Why are you doing this? Yendi stood, stepping closer. Because you belong to me, Thomas. You and I are the same, powerful, educated, born to rule. That village girl? She doesn't fit in this world. Thomas shook his head. You'll never control me. Yendi smirked. We'll see about that. As Thomas left, he knew one thing for sure. Yendi wasn't going to stop. And if he didn't fight back, she would destroy Amadia completely. That night, Amadia sat in her small hut, scrolling through the hateful comments on social media. People called her names: gold digger, fraud, peasant. Some even sent her threats. Her heart ached. She never wanted this. Then her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello. A deep voice responded. If you love Thomas, leave him, or we'll make sure you disappear. The line went dead. Amadia's hands trembled as she dropped the phone. She had tried to be strong. But now, the battle wasn't just about love, it was about survival. And she had no idea how much worse things were about to get. Amadia sat in her small hut, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. The threats, the lies, the humiliation, it was all too much. She had tried to fight, but how could she win against someone as powerful as Yendi? Just as she was about to lose hope, an unexpected visitor arrived. A black Rolls-Royce pulled up outside her home, its polished exterior gleaming even in the dusty village roads. The door opened, and a tall, regal woman stepped out, wearing an emerald green designer gown and diamond-studded heels. It was Madame Ifioma, Chief McClure's estranged sister. A billionaire business mogul who had built her empire without her brother's help. Amadia, the woman called out, her voice both soft and commanding. Amadia hesitated before stepping forward. Yes, Ma. Madame Ifioma studied her for a moment. You must be the girl my nephew has been fighting for. Amadia swallowed hard. Yes, Ma. But I. Madame Ifioma raised a hand. No need to explain. I've been watching from a distance. And I must say, I'm impressed by your strength. Tears stung Amadia's eyes. No one had ever told her that before. Madame Ifioma took a deep breath. I stayed out of my brother's affairs for years. But I refuse to let Yendi or anyone else bully you. Thomas is a grown man, and he has the right to choose his own future. Amadia was stunned. Why are you helping me? Madame Ifioma smiled. Because I was once you, my dear. A village girl in love with a man I wasn't supposed to have. I lost my love because I didn't fight hard enough. I won't let history repeat itself. Amadia's heart swelled with hope. Madame Ifioma wasted no time. She made a few calls, and within hours, the negative articles about Amadia disappeared from the internet. The next day, news broke that Madame Ifioma was investing millions into Thomas's startup. Suddenly, his struggling business became one of the most talked about ventures in Africa. Chief Eclore was furious when he heard the news. He stormed into Madame Ifioma's mansion. "What are you doing?" he roared. Madame Ifioma sipped her tea calmly. "Something you should have done, supporting your son. You're encouraging his foolishness." "No," she corrected him. "I'm encouraging his happiness." For the first time, Chief Eclore was speechless. Meanwhile, Yendi was also losing control. Investors began pulling out of her father's company, whispering about her unethical tactics. She had built her power on manipulation, but now it was crumbling before her eyes. Desperate, she tried to reach Thomas, but he refused to take her calls. For the first time in her life, Yendi had lost. With his business thriving and his family slowly coming around, Thomas made the biggest move of his life. He proposed to Amadia. It wasn't in a grand ballroom or a luxury yacht, but right in the village where their love story began. With a stunning diamond ring and a heart full of love, he knelt before her. "Amadia, you are my heart, my strength, my future. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded.
Yes.
Yes, 1,000 times yes. The village erupted in celebration. Even Chief Eclore, though still a bit reluctant, attended the wedding. Seeing the joy in his son's eyes, he finally accepted that true love was more powerful than status or wealth. As for Yendi, she disappeared from the social scene, her influence shattered. Madame Ifioma took Amadia under her wing, grooming her into a strong, independent woman. And together, Thomas and Amadia built an empire of their own, one based on love, respect, and perseverance. Moral of the story: true love is stronger than wealth and status. Money and power may influence people, but real love cannot be bought. Never underestimate the power of resilience. Amadia faced humiliation, threats, and sabotage, but she never gave up. Kindness and courage will always find an ally. When Amadia thought she was alone, Madame Ifioma stepped in to support her. Success is the best revenge. Thomas and Amadia didn't fight back with hate. They fought back with hard work and success. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories filled with drama, love, and powerful life lessons. What do you think about Amadia and Thomas's journey? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next story. Movie Camera Sparkles.